I want to talk about several different things, but I want to mention, in 1989, our team that went to the Final Four, I was really proud of that team, and I thought there was a lot of things to talk about because we were quick and fast, and we could score, we could do a lot of things. But Dick Vitale that year, he didn't want to talk about our team. All he wanted to talk about was the Lou do. Hey, I'm like everybody else. I don't like when people talk about my hair and get personal, but he did it all the time. And therefore, I wondered why Dick would do that, and then I remembered, Dick is a very jealous guy. See, I had a lot more hair than he did, and that's why he did it all the time. And but Dick is quite a guy, and he's really great for basketball. He's done a lot, I think, for basketball, and I like Dick. I consider him a friend, and we enjoy visiting with him every opportunity we get. Now, I'm very happy to be here on behalf of Converse. I've been with Converse all through the years, and so I never will forget when I was just a kid growing up, the most expensive pair of shoes I had as a youngster, maybe in the 9th grade, was a pair of Converse shoes, $3.95. And of course, you know what they cost now, as well as all the other shoes. So, but it's a great company, and they do a super job, and I'm just very happy to be a part of it. I'm also happy to be here because basketball here in the state means a lot. It's a great basketball state, tremendous coaches. I know a lot of you. I visited with many of you, and I know that it's really outstanding. You have great coaches, great talent, and that's why you produce so many outstanding players. Now, I noticed on the agenda here that Judd Heathcote is going to be speaking. He's going to be the speaker tonight for the banquet. Had I known you were that hard up, I would have stayed over. Boy, I'm telling you what, it really makes me mad about Judd, that darn guy. We were up here last year, and we had Michigan State down 15 points at one time, and then the officials took over. By the way, do we have any media here? You know, you really have to be careful. I tell some stories about coaches, and you know, when you have media, I'll tell you what I did here just 2 or 3 days ago. We had the Big Ten press conference, and so I told them that was in Indianapolis. And so I went over, I told them that I drove over, and I was really reluctant to go because after all, I'd been to Purdue in Indiana. And so I came into town and stopped to get gas, and this guy was really nice. He vacuumed out my car, stopped to get a sandwich. They couldn't do enough for me. And it really surprised me because I'd taken teams to Indiana and Purdue, and I know how that I'd been treated. And so you go there, I mean, they called you names and swear at you and all that. And I said in the luncheon, I said, that's just an extension of the head coaches. And so would you believe that they printed that? And my administration, why are you knocking Indiana and Purdue? Don't say things like, I said, look, I was only kidding. I really wasn't. But I had to try to get out of it some way, so I'm very reluctant how I talk if we have media here, so I hope we don't. If we do, let me know about it. But going back to Judd, you know, last year, I cannot believe the call that was made. Our guy had the ball with just 10 seconds to go. I said, look, what we're going to do, we're going to penetrate, and we're going to get a shot and win this ball game. And so Judd's player was right here, and my kid started driving here. He jumped over in front and tackled my guy, and I thought, hey, we're going to win this thing. We got a 2-shot foul. Would you believe they called it on my guy, Rennie Clemens, and Michigan gets the ball. Michigan State gets the ball. And so here's what Judd has bragged about all the time. So he sets up a guy down in here, and he sets up this play. Now, it so happens that we run the very same thing. We ran out of the neck. As a matter of fact, that's where Judd got it, I want you to know. And so what we do, we usually put our big guy, Deion Thomas, here, and we usually put whoever's covering the throwing man, we put him down here to be safety. We don't want this guy to get the ball. When you have that set up, don't let that guy get the ball. We use that all the time. But our little point guard, his man, threw the ball in. And I guess he hadn't been used to doing it, but instead of getting back here, we cover these guys. We put quite a bit of pressure because with 3 seconds to go, or 4, you cannot. All of my second guessers, they said, why do you cover up here? You need to be back there. Well, as coaches, you know that with 3 or 4 seconds to go, you can get that ball to a good penetrator, and he can get down and score. And so we line it, but instead of my point guard getting back here like he's supposed to, what does he do? He lines up here like he's lost. He lines up in here, and we're over there screaming, trying to get him. So Michigan State, forget about that guy. He was up here. They passed the ball right in here. And by the way, it wasn't over and back, I think. But the referee's not going to call that. Judd had him intimidated at that time. And so they pass the ball here, and this guy takes off, and he hands off, and they score with no time on the clock. That's a heck of a way to lose the game. And but I mean, things like that happen, and I want to talk about that play a little bit more later on because that's what we do, and it's a very good play, and that's the one that Judd has been bragging about. And when you see Judd, you tell him that it wasn't the play, it's just my guy defensively was dumb about the way he lined up. So don't give Judd any credit there at all. But let me tell you, I don't know whether you heard or not, but Judd had a disaster in his house just about 2 weeks ago. Obviously, the grandchildren came back and came to his home, got back into the bedroom, and destroyed a year's supply of condoms. Yeah, they punched holes in both of them. So now Judd is not here today, is he? Good. Then I can continue to kind of ride him and do all those things. He's always a good subject. So I always like to do that. But these three, I'm going to get to basketball here in just a minute, but these 3 guys died, and they came up to the pearly gates. And so St. Peter always likes to visit before he admits his people. And so he invited the first guy in, and he asked him what his IQ was. And the guy said 175. St. Peter said, that is great. With that probing mind of yours, you're going to have a lot of good discussions with God. Second guy came in. He asked him what his IQ was. The guy said 150. And he said, that's marvelous. You're going to have a lot of good theological discussions with Apostle Paul. The third guy came up, and he asked him what his IQ was. And the guy said 53. St. Peter responded, how about them Hoosiers? Okay, let's talk a little bit about basketball. After all, that's what we're here for. And so what I would like to do is to just talk about some situations. Out of bounds plays, on the end, on the side, some special plays that we have, maybe attacking full court presses, half court presses. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about. And so we'll try to move along and talk about a few other things that we think are important. Now, young coaches want strictly plays. Older coaches, they might want a little philosophy and different things as we go along. And so we're going to try to mix and do all of that. One other story before I get into this. This guy was a salesman, and he was gone all the time. I mean, he was never home. And so his wife, it always bothered his wife, but he was gone all the time. And so he went on this trip, and he's gone for 5 weeks. Came home. Knocked on the door, and his wife came to the door, and they greeted each other. And she said, darling, I'd like for you to come back in the backyard. And so she took him back to the backyard. And as he was going out there, he noticed there's a little house there. Looked like a chicken house, which it was in chicken wire. And as he got a little closer, it was. And he said, look, sweetheart, I think it's great that we've got a chicken house here in the backyard, and we've got some chickens there. And, he says, we could have eggs for breakfast, and maybe later on we could have fried chicken. And so as he looked a little closer, he noticed there were 6 hens and 2 roosters. And he said, sweetheart, now there's one thing you need to, I think it's great. I really approve of everything you've done here, but I want you to know you don't need 2 roosters for 6 hens. She looked at him and she said, darling, if one's going to be gone a lot, you do. So, guys, stay home. You're not supposed to be gone a lot. Okay, now Judd will have a better one than that tonight, so you can look forward to him. Okay, now let's talk about motivation. You know, I really get a kick out of some of these guys. You know, some coaches are great on-the-floor coaches. Some are great game coaches. Some motivate well. Some can't motivate a team. Now that is, you know, I just cannot believe that. I have yet to see a good basketball coach that could not motivate his team. But see, it all depends on who's making those statements. You know, this guy's a great motivator, but he can't coach. You hear all of that. There are a lot of great coaches, and great coaches can motivate. Motivation is very, very important. And you have players. I've had players that you can motivate, but you almost have to do it on a daily basis. You motivate different ways, and on motivation. Look, what we do, we try to set up, at the beginning of each year we tell the guys, look, we want to give a trophy at the end for the guy who has the most rebounds, the highest shooting percentage from the free throw line, and so on. Now that'll motivate some. As a matter of fact, some people are motivated. Some people want to go into politics at an early age, maybe 5 or 6, and they can see and they're motivated to do that. But a lot of people can't. Some can be motivated for a year. So we give out plaques and trophies at the end of the year. You can motivate them. Some players can be motivated for a month, some for a day. So you have to, as you're coaching a team, you need to keep this in mind. One top insurance executive I heard one time, he says, look, we can take an employee and he's not motivated enough to sell insurance and do a good job to make a living for his wife and kids. But if we give out a clock radio at the end of the month, he'll work himself to death to try to win that. And that's true with your guys. So what we try to do, we try to motivate them daily. Each day, and maybe I was here 6, 7 years ago, maybe I mentioned this, I can't remember, but number one, we have little vests that we give our guys, and they put them on. The number 1 rebound of the year, the next day, chairman of the boards. So on the shirt, we have chairman of the boards. That means that guy was a leading rebounder the day before. The next one, maybe Secretary of Defense, will be a guy who we have selected to be the best defensive player. Third, maybe Doctor, Mr. Provider. Maybe this guy is, you could do it for screens, you could do it for assists, however you want to do it. And say screening on that is, let's say we want to emphasize assist, so you can say Mr. Assist or however you want to do it. Okay, so when they come out for practice, they'll slip on that vest. Well, they'll shoot, and hey, they take a lot of pride in that. They better, because those are things that we're emphasizing. Now, you can't emphasize everything. You can't emphasize 20 things. You pick out maybe 4 or 5, and then you try to emphasize that. Now, so we think this helps to motivate, and that's what it's all about. Daily motivation. Some guys may not be motivated for the next week, but for that day they are, so we try to motivate them to get them to play hard that day. Every day in practice, when we get together, by the way, statistics, it's a great way to motivate. Some people keep stats, some don't. Some keep stats and they don't use them. Practically every day we'll spend at least 5 minutes, and on certain days, maybe more, talking about the stats. So if you're going to keep stats, then use them to motivate your people to play and to get them to play hard. Like, here's the way we would do that. Let's say that George was chairman of the boards. So we'll pull them together at the end of practice and we'll say, we'll say, okay, read the stats. George, 15 rebounds. George, 15 rebounds today. So we'll talk about that. I may take 5 minutes just talking about rebounding. I say, can you believe George, 15 rebounds today? Did you see him go and get those rebounds? Did you see what he did? And I may rip off his shirt and wring out the perspiration, let it drip on the floor, and talk about that for 15 minutes. Hey, now the next day when they come out, somebody's going to be trying to get that shirt. And maybe Secretary of Defense drawing the charge. One of these might be Purple Heart. If that's what you want to, we have one we call the Purple Heart. He's the guy who draws the charge. Well, maybe we want to emphasize that this year or at that particular time. So we would talk about that. So if we're going to try to motivate them to play hard, and we talk about playing hard all the time. We really like guys who play hard. Until the last 2 or 3 years, and we haven't had much, we led the Big Ten defense for a few years. We were either first or second about every year. And we're right at the top on rebounding every year. And I think we have good rebounders. We have good defensive players, but we emphasize that. Every year, our goal is to be the best rebounding team and the best defensive team in the Big Ten. Now, you know, everybody, if you say, who plays defense in the Big Ten? Everybody say, Indiana. Well, Indiana plays excellent defense. But there are other teams that play good defense too. I thought Michigan State was a tremendous defensive team. Has been over the last couple of years, man for man. Judd has used zone a lot, but the last 2 or 3 years he's played man and they've been excellent. Michigan has been very good. I thought the Fab Five for young people played excellent defense. They really did a good job. So if you're going to be good, you've got to play defense. Well, if you're going to play defense, you've got to motivate them. I've never gone out to playgrounds and I've never seen players out there working defensively. I see them working on their shooting and dribbling and all that, but they're not going to be out there working on their defense. So that's where you can pick up a lot of slack. When we get players, we want to recruit the best offensive players we can. Now, we're going to teach them to play defense because it doesn't take a lot of, as far as teaching the techniques of defense, it doesn't amount to a lot. But to get them to play defense, it means a lot, and it's hard to do. You've got to almost force them to do it. So goals, we think it's very important when you're trying to teach somebody and try to get them to play hard and do things like that. We want to get them to play hard, so you've got to try to motivate them. One drill, it's a very simple drill that we run. We think it's a very important drill. We will line up, say 2 or 3 guys here. All it is, it's a simple layup drill. And there are a lot of layup drills. It's how you run them. So what we'll do, we'll drive for the basket. We'll fake a shot and drive to the basket. Now we'll check, see if the guy's walking. I don't know how many, I've seen state championships lost because a guy will fake and drag his pivot foot. Now, we don't want that to happen, and we're going to try our best to correct that. So every day in practice, not only are we running a layup drill, we're faking, we're running it, taking it in there, but the guy behind us checking to see if he walks, and so we make a big deal out of it. So as soon as we catch 2 or 3 guys walking, then what we will do, I will take and get the ball, and I will maybe fake a shot or fake a drive. I'll do it, and I'll count them. 1, 2, 3, get up 25. Do it 25 times. And then I'll say, did I walk? Well, I haven't walked in 40 years. So, no, I didn't walk. Okay, we expect you to do that. We expect you to. There's no reason to fake and move your pivot foot. Players do it all the time. And so we really come down hard on them if they have turnovers that you don't need, foolish turnovers. Now, some of the time when you're passing the ball, you're just going to have turnovers. And if we can keep it to about 13 to 15 turnovers, we think we can win ball games. But we'll layup drill, but we don't want to turn the ball over. Now, we go on to, there are a lot of shooting drills. We don't have a lot of shooting drills. We have maybe 2 or 3. And a lot of people may use this, but one of the things that we try to do, and it's simple to get into, let's say we have 12 players. So they'll line up, we'll say, okay, line up. We're going to have a 20-point shooting drill. So they line up. We have them count off. Let's say we have them count to count to 6. So they count to 6. Okay, we'll say the 1s here, the 2s, the 3s, maybe the 4s, the 5s, and the 6s. So we will start in close and maybe with stationary shots. So they'll move in. Now we'll see which line. Now again, everything is competitive. Everything we do in practice is competitive. We don't like free shooting. If they come out to warm up, we only want 5 or 6 minutes of free shooting. That free shooting will do you very little good because they get out there and fool around and think about what they're going to do tonight. We want it to be competitive. As a matter of fact, when they come out to do their free shooting, we may have the managers charting them. And then at the end of practice, we'll say, look, Joe, when you came out for your free shooting for 5 minutes, you realized you only made 20% of your shots? What's wrong? Didn't you concentrate? So we want them to know it's like having a camera on them all the time. When they come out, it's business for 2 hours or 2.5, whatever it is. It's business. It's just like a game. Some people think, well, I want to roll the ball out there and let them play and have a good time in practice. Well, if they have a good time in practice, they probably will in the game, but they probably won't win many ball games. So we want the pressure on them all the time. So we say count to 6. We count to 6. 1s here, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s. Go! So they start shooting. Now the first 2, let's say we have 2 here, and of course we'd have 2 and 2 and 2. We have 12 players. You can have any number depending, and you don't have to have them shoot at 2 baskets. If you have side baskets, they can shoot there. So the first 2 guys to get 20 shots, they'll say 20, and we'll stop them. Okay, now 20 here. How many did you get? 18, 17, 15, 13, 19. Okay, now, so we might say, okay, now let's see who won it this time. Now, all along, they're counting their shots. These 2 guys are trying to beat the other 5 groups. But they're also keeping count of their shots. Now, if you have managers, you can have them help. Okay, so let's say we'll do it again. Okay, and then maybe we'll move it. Now, maybe the next time we will fake a shot and take a bounce. See, stationary shooting and then a quick bounce. And then we move out to the 3-point arc and we can shoot. Okay, then we pull them together. Okay, now, how many shots did you make? So maybe number 1 made 35 or 36, and we find out, and we record those. So when the shooting is over at the end of a month, we know how many you've made. So they're shooting. These 2 guys are shooting against the other 5, yet each individual is shooting against the others. So that's our 20-point shooting drill. Now another shooting drill that we use is, and a lot of people use this one, but we'll divide them into 3s. Maybe these 3 guys are shooting here. And now this is 18-point shooting. Each player is going to take 18 shots, and then they report back. So these 3 would be shooting here, these 3 would be shooting here, and so on. So this player would take maybe shot 1, shot 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then somebody else would do it. Now, when these 3 people have shot 18 shots, then what they will do, they'll run back to half court and line up. Now the reason, so they're trying to make as many shots as they can individually, yet they're trying to get through their shots 3 times 18 and then get back here because we want them to be hustling. We don't want them to get out there and take their time, they shoot, and then walk around and do this. We want them to be active. So let's say these 3 finish, they come here, 3 more finish, they line up, 3 more, they line up, 3 more, they line up, 3 more. Okay, so then we come out and we will record their shots, of course. And then we'll say, look, these 3 guys, they were first. And I noticed them, they really did a great job. I may go back to 3 that came in last and talk about that. Now, if these 3 came in last, if they're last tomorrow or the next day, then we're going to really talk about that. So it's competition. The shooting drills are competition just like everything else. Okay, now along with shooting, so we keep pressure on them all the time. Along with shooting, how do they gain confidence? How do you handle your team on shooting? You know, mom and dad can give the son confidence, the cousins, different ones, the newspaper, radio, TV, but nobody can do it like the coach. Now, if you tell a player, if you're reasonable, and fair, and you tell a player, look, your shooting is coming along. I'm amazed at how you are coming along, and you're a lot better shooter today than you were, and you talk to him about his shooting, that means a lot to him because he wants to please the coach and he wants to feel that the coach believes in him. So, how do you handle your shooting? Some people say, well, I don't want, if you've got, say, player 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, player 5 is a 60% shooter. Player 4 is, say, 55%. Player 3 is 45%. Player 2 is 35%. And player 1 shoots 25%. Now, some coaches believe that you tell player 5, don't shoot. You know, you run the ball clever, you do this, or you rebound, don't shoot. Now, if you do that, first of all, he or she is shooting 25% because they don't have any confidence. Now, if you tell 25 and or player 1 and player 2, look, player 1, don't you shoot. Player 2, you can shoot maybe, or shoot some of the time. Okay, now, if you do that, now you're going to ruin these two. So it's a touchy situation. It's a touchy situation as to how you're going to do it, but you've got to deal with it. You've got to deal with it, otherwise number 2 or number 1, they want to shoot. They probably haven't been stars. They haven't won a ball game with a shot at the end. And if you get in a close game, invariably, number 1 will want to shoot it. I've had them and you've had them. So they want to be a star. They haven't gotten any attention. So how do you handle that? I'll tell you how we do it. We will get them together after we've been out there 2 or 3 days and maybe number 1 is putting up a lot of shots, too many shots. And so we'll get them together and we'll say, now look, we may take number 2 and we'll get the guys together. Now we can't all put up shots. First of all, say we have 15 guys, I'll ask them, write on down, how many shots do you want to put up? This guy will say 15 a game, 14, 17, 20, now believe it or not, 20 or 15. We get through, we're talking about, say, 230 shots a game. And I'll say, now look, guys, the average team is going to put up maybe 60 shots a game. So you guys want to put up 230. See, so that's not going to work. So we've got to try to work this thing out. And I'll say, Jim, you think you might cut down a little bit on yours? 15, 20, and so on. We might kid about it a little bit. And then we'll get to this other. And I may put this up on the board. And I may go, I find it quite humorous. I go to number 2 and I'll say, now number 2, look, these, I'll say George. I'll say, George, who should put up the most shots? You got 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And the guy that I'm talking to, George, is about like number 2. He's not a good shooter. So I'll say, now, should all of you put up the same number of shots? Or who should put up the same number? In this situation, who should put up the most shots? This George is number 2. George will kind of scratch his head and think. Now, he knows that number 5 should have put up the most shots, but he doesn't want to admit it quickly. He'll scratch his head first and say, well, Coach, I guess 5. And I'll say, okay, let's go down. Anybody disagree with it? Well, let's agree on that, okay? So here's the way we're going to do it. Number 5 is going to put up, we're going to try to get the ball to him. He's going to put up more shots, number 4 and so on. And the other guys, we want you to shoot your shots, and as you raise your percentage now, we're going to have you shoot more. Take your shots and raise your percentage, we're going to have you shoot more. So this is the way we're going to try to do it. It's not like it is in baseball. Baseball, every ninth time, or depending on the league, you got to step up there and you got to bat. But in basketball, number 1 doesn't have to shoot every 5th time. So if you're going to win ball games, he can't be shooting a lot, he or she. On winning ball games, you design an offense or whatever you're doing based on your personnel. And you say, now that's a simple, no, everybody may not do that. You break your people down and you figure out ways to get that ball to number 5, get that ball to number 3. You work hard to do that. I've been coaching 38 years and I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made about every mistake that you can make. But I know the simple things don't always get done when you're coaching. You don't always select your top people. I don't know, for years I've seen coaches, I've been guilty of this too. When you're developing a team, I'll put a 6'4", big, strong guy there, maybe an average shooter. And then we go along, they zone us or get back in there, and we got to have shooting. Then we try to take this good athlete out, put in a skinny kid to try to shoot the ball. Now, when you're trying to pick your starters, make sure that you've got to have shooting. You can't win without it. And we all try to, what happens all the time, let's say that we always try to get a little more size, and everybody needs size. But there have been more mistakes made because you're trying to get a bigger player in there than almost any phase of the game. Okay, let's say you got a 5'10" guy at guard, and you got a 6-foot guy at guard, and maybe 6'2", depending on 6'7", and say 6'4". Now, this could possibly be your best ball club, but what we try to do, then we try to eliminate the 5'10" guy, try to move this guy over, get a 6'4" guy here, get a 6'6" guy here, and a 6'8" guy there. Now, you just move each player up one notch, and you don't have a ball club. Look, this guy has the speed and quickness. Now you move this guy, and he's a little bit taller, but he can't quite get it done. Then keep rotating. It's the worst thing you can do, and we've all been guilty of that. Regardless of the size, get your best people in there, and this guy may not be a good player. You got two guys. He may not be a great player, but he may make everybody else better. So you got to look at all of that. And size. Our Final Four team that was beaten by Michigan in the Final Four, we were very small. We were 6'4.5". We were 6'6" and 6'5", and we're about 6'5" and 6'4". We weren't very big enough. Now, we could jump and we could do some things, but they could play and we could do a lot of different things. We had some bigger people we could have stuck out there, but speed and quickness is more important. Speed and quickness, I want you to think about football. Why do we have trouble when we go to the Rose Bowl, the Big Ten? We have trouble every year because we're going against people who can throw the ball and people with quickness. You know, one of the reasons that football is not very good right now in the Big Ten, it's not great, it's pretty good. Not really, a lot of the teams are not as good as they usually are because they're slow. They got a lot of slow people. Illinois, we have slow people. We have slow receivers. Our backs are not that quick. Hey, it's the same principle in basketball. You need some quickness to win. Last year, we didn't have any quickness, and we really suffered because we had slow people on the perimeter. We couldn't get them open. They couldn't cover anybody. So if you have a slow team, try to bring up somebody from the JV. Try to get more quickness. You really need to do that if you expect to win. One other thing on shooting and confidence. Gordon Wood was a football coach in Texas. He won 12 state titles. And so, I've always thought about this, and I marveled at the way he handled this situation. Now, to win state and even one time in Texas, it's something special. He won it 12 times. So he took his team to the state championship game down in Austin. And so the day before they went into practice, and one of the managers came running up, and he said, "Coach Wood, I forgot to pack the jocks." Coach Wood reached in his pocket, he pulled out some money, he said, "Look, John, I want you to take this money, go down to Athletic Supply. You get those jocks. Now, next year, when we're down here playing for the state title, don't you forget the jocks." There were coaches around there. There were managers around there, players standing around there. Now, what kind of a message was he sending? Now, do you have an idea how he might have won 12 state titles? Wasn't that a subtle way to instill confidence in your people? No one took that as he wasn't kidding. No one took it that way. They just, the way he talked, they just all assumed they'd be down again next year. So, as we're coaching and we're trying to build confidence in our team, you're not going to win unless you have confidence. your guys are not going to win. So whatever you have to do, and the best way to succeed and to build confidence is to win. But some way you've got to get it going. Teams that don't think they can win, they're not going to win the ball game. So as you think about your coaching and your shooting and all, make sure that you try to instill confidence in your people. Now, let's talk about some other things that we want to talk about. Let's talk about some plays and whatever. I want to show you, and we've been running it for a few years, I think it's one of the best plays that, in the 38 years, it's one of the best plays that we've used. It's a little more than a play, but I call it a set play. We like to use our big guys. First of all, I don't know how many of you switch defensively. Do you do any? Now, some people like on a guard to guard. Let's say there's a screen, they would switch that, but that's all. Some will switch more than that. For years, we played it straight and wouldn't switch, maybe guard to guard, but we believe in switching. I just believe that. I believe if we've got a guy in the corner, like, and this guy is, and we've got to pick here, and we got to pick here, and we got to pick here. Now, how are you going to cover that if you don't switch? We switch, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. We switch the three perimeter people, and occasionally we will switch the fourth guy on a set play. Now, for years, I came from the old school where we played man-for-man defense. In high school, we couldn't play anything but man. In college, nothing but man. A zone was a bad word, and we wouldn't switch. We had to fight through screens. Well, a few years ago, we started switching, and we've been doing it ever since. I think it's a way to play defense. If a team runs a lot of screens and you don't switch, I think you've got some problems. You just can't fight through consecutive screens if they're good screens. Now, on a single screen, yes, you can probably do that. So this brings up the play. Now, so on designing offense, we're not going to have guards. We're not going to have perimeter people screening for perimeter people. We're going to assume that they're going to switch. We have big people screening for little people, or little people screening for the big people. Sonny Smith, we go to meetings, and Sonny is a good friend of mine at VCU, and so we talk about, and I said, this last year I said, well, you told me you're going to switch three perimeter people. He said, well, I started that, but I gave it up because it fouled up our offense. I said, that's why you switch. Because if you have an offense, if we got three perimeter people here, and these guys are screening, and you're switching, and that's about all you have, you're going to be in all kinds of trouble because you're not going to get anything going. So it's very important to switch. So the play that we run all the time, we call it our 23. We'll put the two big players up in here. We'll put two good shooters down in there. Two good shooters. So we'll come down the floor. These two guys will go down and set. Now, these are two big guys. For you, it could be 6'2" or 6'1". Let me say this. It doesn't make any difference what level you're on. Coaching is coaching. I started out in junior high. I coached the B team. I coached high school ball. I coached a small school university, 1,800. And so it's all the same. You might have to make minor changes. But I went to Canada to speak, and I started to walk out, and I overheard a couple of guys talking, and the one guy said, hey, maybe you can do that in Illinois. We can't do that. And I've heard people say, well, you've got all the facilities. You got the basketballs. You got this and that. We don't have that. I don't want to hear that. Occasionally my assistants will say, well, our guy can't do that because we can't beat that guy. I don't want to hear that. There's a way to do it. Let's see if we can get it done. So you can always come up with excuses. And I know you have a great summer program. Hey, that's how you win ball games, having a summer program. But see, all coaches don't want to do that. They want to fish and hunt and do other things in the summer instead of building the program. So you got to work at it. So on this, it doesn't make any difference what size you have. It still works. So you take your two big guys and you come in here. Now think about this. While this is going on, they're fighting for their lives in here. If you've got a good point guard, penetrate. The lost art in the game today with a lot of coaches is they forget the best thing to do is to take the ball to the basket with a dribble. Now in the Big Ten, in around the basket, we can muscle and claw and punch, and they won't even call a foul. But you let a guy drive and get a little touch, and he'll call a foul. So penetration is a key to winning. If you don't have people who can penetrate, you need to try to develop some. Try to develop some who can penetrate. So the first thing we do is we go down to set these picks. If you've got a good three-point shooter there, then look at that driving room. I mean, we can take that ball to the basket, lay off, get in there, and make a lot of good things happen. I'm going to talk about penetration a little bit more, but let's go on with the play. So we come in here, and we break right in here. Now, if the defensive player, if he tries to fight up in here, we're going to slip to the basket on him. If he stays back in here, we're going to rub shoulders. Now, on any pick, when you're setting screens, your guys and gals have a tendency not to rub shoulders. You have to know how to set a screen. You have to know how to accept the screen. So we come in here. Now, these are two concerns. If he tries to go with us, we're going to come up here and get a good shot. If these two people stay with their men and he tries to go with us, we're going to get a nice shot there. Now, if we try to come up here and they jump out here, like I told you, we're going to slip to the basket and try to get a layup. If we come here, up in here, and they switch, let's say now the way they try to defense us, the top man will jump out. When the top man jumps out, of course, if I'm setting a screen and this man jumps out, I go to the basket, try to get the layup. But let's don't think about that now. Let's think about running the play through. It's really easy to teach. You can teach it in a short period of time, and it's really effective. Two good shooters, point guard. Look at the driving. Now, if you're going to penetrate, you've got to open up driving lanes. And how you design your offense will have a lot to do with whether you can penetrate or not. So, we come up in here. Let's say that we're taking the screens. We pass the ball, and for some reason, we can't get the shot. Here's another good shooter. Maybe the best shooter. The best shooter. As soon as we set these screens, we go right across, set a pick. We go right across and set a pick. So we come in here, and let's say we go along the baseline for the shot. Now, anytime you set good hard screens, big guys screening a small guy, it's hard to switch, then sometimes they need to give help. As soon as we set screens, if this guy's, then we duck these two. Duck them up in there. So if there's anything, if they don't do a good job, this one guy almost has to cover the player coming across. So let's say that would be number 2. They have to cover. You can't give help because of these guys ducking to the basket. This player still has his dribble. If the player playing too tight, he can take a bounce and go up and shoot. So we've come through. Now Deion Thomas has made a lot of baskets where he sets that screen and steps up in there. The best way to get the ball to the post man is have him screen and then open up. It's an easy way to do that. Okay, now let's say that number 2 comes through. Let's say number 1, let's say this is number 3 here. And number 1 passed the ball and number 1 went to the corner. Now, number 2 came through behind those screens and he didn't get the ball. 4 and 5 set the screens and they ducked, but they didn't get a shot. Okay, but let's say we did pass the ball to number 2, but he didn't have the shot. Okay, now, remember this is maybe your best shooter. So what we do, we come, 3 can fake and come back, or you can go down and interchange with 1. Let's say we faked and we came back. Okay, now we go again. That was the first wave. That was the first wave. As soon as we see this taking place, number 4 will step up behind him. Number 5 will come here. We're going to set consecutive picks going back the other way. Consecutive picks. Now, Andy Kaufman 2 years ago scored 21 a game. We had him running behind those picks. And so it's if you got a good shooter, again, when the ball is here, we've got this going on here. After they set picks, they can open up. They can open up in here, and you can dump the ball into them. Now, we come through. If we don't have it, we can take him right back through. Once we run 23, we keep going until we either score or lose the ball. We just keep doing it. We run behind those picks. Just keep running. And it's 2 years ago, it was about 40% of our offense, that one set play. Okay, now let's talk about some of the things that we try to do. Again, we're setting the screens. Let's say we drive in here. Now remember, when this is going on, let's say we're coming up in here and this player jumps out or they switch. We come up in here and let's say this player will jump out. Immediately we go to the basket and we try to hit them. Now, the other guy who's screening, he goes and we still have it. See, anytime you're designing a set play, don't let them force you out of it. So if they jump out and switch, we're going to run in and we're going to roll to the basket. When this guy jumps out, the other guy is down in here someplace. I don't know where he is, but if they switch, it's going to be hard to cover that guy. This guy rolling the basket because the other guy's lost in here somewhere. On a double consecutive pick, it's much harder to switch than it is if you just have a single pick. So if you jump out here, we're going to roll. Now we're still going to run the play because we still got our guys coming here. Now another thing we try to do. Let's say we've got our picks coming. We're driving in here. We got a 3-point shooter. This player is coming here, and we're coming up. Now, if this defensive player tries to cut through, if he tries to cut through, then we're going to try to flare on him. These players, the screeners, need to be about a yard apart, maybe a yard and a half. So if we come here and he cuts through, immediately he steps and he closes that and he backs up for the shot. Now, another thing, if you're going to run a set play, you got to be able to run it because you're going to switch. They're going to try to force you out of that set play. So if let's say that we're screening and the defense did that and we would flare. They close the gap. Okay, so the ball goes here. Okay, now, after they set the screen and the guy gets by, now we're still going to go and we're going to get that guy. We're going to still try to get within that double screening and keep running it back and forth. A set play is no good if they can switch or do our pressure and take you out of it because they're going to do that. They're going to do that. So the thing about set plays, this is really not a set play. It's more of a maybe a little offense. It's not just a set play. Set plays are very easy to teach. But in a lot of cases, if you have time to prepare, you can defense them also. But this is pretty hard to defend against because you're doing a lot of different things. Now, another thing that you can do off of that, let's say that this player has the ball. This big player, we've already set those screens like that. And the big player, after he set the screen, he ducked up in there. Now remember this point guard who passed the ball there, he just moved to the corner. He moved to the corner. So this player, he ducks up in here. Now if they're overplaying, you can always reverse the ball. And then let him pin him and go back in there. It's really a lot of offense and fairly simple. Simple to teach. I'll guarantee you 10 minutes a day for 3 or 4 days, then you would do a pretty good job because anytime you have people running behind screens, they don't have to be great at it for you to get some shots. Any questions on that? Anybody have any questions on it? Okay, out of bounds plays underneath the basket. How many people, how many zone you on the out of bounds plays? Do they zone or play? Most of them zone. Okay, we're going to show you a play that we use if they're zoning. Let's say it's, we'll put a player here. This player can line up here anywhere. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, what we're trying to, let's say it's a zone. We want to get the ball in bounds. The first guy will maybe break in here and try to block the big guy and get the ball there. Or cut in here and try to get it. If he doesn't get it, he'll go over here. The next player will step right in here. Not go, just hang in here tight. The next player, now most of you probably can't do this. If we have a guy who can take the jam, and you don't have to have somebody, we'll have him sneak in here as this is going on and maybe throw to try to get it. But in high school, you probably can't do that. So if he can't get that now, you'll come in here. So if we can't hit any of these people in here, this fellow will step on out and we will hit him. Now the reason he steps and holds is because if you break out here, you might not be able to get the ball to him. So we stop here, and if they try to cut off, we can lay over. We can usually get the ball to the guy there. So when the ball comes here, we break out and we try to catch it in here if we can. There's one thing I want to go back, and I want to show you on the other play. I just happened to think of something. And you can't cover everything. On the man-for-man play we just talked about, let's say we have the ball here, and I hope you can follow me. And these guys have already screened, and the little point guard is here, and the other guy's here. Now we're getting ready to come back through. So we try to pass back here, but they cut the pass off. Anytime they try to cut a pass off like that, we want to take the ball to the basket because we're trying to penetrate anyway. So anytime they would cut that pass off, then we would penetrate. That's something that I forgot to mention to you on the play before. Okay, now let's talk about this play. Now I'm going to go back and draw where everything is. We've got the two big guys who went across and they're setting screens. We've got the defense, something like that. We've got the ball here and we've passed it back here. So the ball was passed in, we reverse it. So when the ball is passed, he comes in here, sets a screen. So the player who is a good shooter, he can either step in here, he can come over the single if he wants to. Or he can come over the double. He can step in here and come over the double for the shot. We got a single screen on one side, a double screen on the other. Now you can't do this, but we can, and over the years, last 2-3 years we haven't been successful because we haven't had good people, but we do a little bit more with that. What we do, this guy is a good guy who can handle the jam, but that's basically the play. That's basically the play for you. You go over the double. Now, you got the ball in bounds. You're ready to attack the zone. But what we do on that, and college coaches can do it, we put a good guy here who can jump. Okay, and let's say the defense is something like that. And as soon as we run that and we get a shot, then this player starts trying to cheat out over the top or get over there. When they do that, we bring this man up, forcing that one to take him. Now we go for the lob. You probably can't do that, but it's really a great play because when they fight over to cover and you shoot this man up, the big man takes him. Now this guy goes for the jam. It's a heck of a play if you happen to have that kind of talent. Okay, now another play, and we started running this because it's like the set play. You line up man for man. Man for man. Put big, big, little, little. Now again, we don't screen little, little. We don't screen because we switch on that. Big, big, we do very little screening because we switch on it. So you got two good shooters here. So about time the ball starts handling, don't wait until he gets the ball because you might get a 5-second count. But as you see the referee is getting ready to hand the ball to him, we come across a set of pick here. We come across with these big guys and we set a pick to try to get the ball there. And now if they jump out or they switch, we roll these guys back in there. So let's say the ball comes in and we didn't get the shot. They will continue. They'll turn and continue to go down and get this guy coming here. It's pretty tough to cover. If you, again, trying to get over consecutive picks set by big people. And so you've got, it's simple. It is so simple and very easy if they're going to play you man for man. Because you just, again, it's hard to, we'll set it up again. Big, big, little, little. Let's say the ball is here. We're going to go across. We're going to go across and pick like that. And then, after they set the pick, and we've gotten a few baskets where if they jump out, they have to just roll back in here. And then they go right on down. The ball comes in. We go right on down and get the other player. We're consecutively picking for the best two shooters that we have. Any questions on that? Okay, and that happens a lot of the time. Let's say, now usually when they do that, they'll get right under the basket. The player covering that one. We got big, big, little, little. The only thing he's going to do is if we roll back, he may bother that some. But we've gotten it anyway. So he's not going to interfere with this at all. The only thing he's going to do is if we come across, see if we come across and get him, that he won't be a factor other than if they jump out and we roll somebody in there. But you may get it anyway. If you roll back in there, you still might be able to get the ball in. And then to go on down, on these shots, it won't be a factor. If you're rolling people back in there, you may have to work to get the ball to him. But as far as getting shots here and here, he won't be a factor on that. Any other questions on that? Let me take just 4 or 5 minutes and talk about defensing man for man. First of all, I don't know that we do anything very well, but I think we teach defense better than anything else. Because I grew up on defense and I believe in defense. And let me tell you a story. My brother coached at Howard Payne College. Now, he was really an offensive coach. He didn't care too much about defense, just offense all the time. And so he went down to play Stephen F. Austin one Saturday night. And the next morning, he was scheduled to speak on defense at Baylor. And so we all get stuck with things that we probably should be talking on. And so he was supposed to speak on defense that next day. So he goes down to Stephen F. Austin and he plays a game. He scores 123 points and he got beat 17. Now, how would you like to go and speak on defense a day after a team scored 140 points on you? Well, he had to do it. And so I always kid him about that. I was defensive minded. All he wanted to do is shoot the ball. He's now running a restaurant and I'm still coaching. So defense is important. There's no doubt about it. But what we try to do defensively, we try to switch the 3 perimeter people and the 2 inside people. So if you've got 2 big people, a lot of people screen across it, we're going to switch that. And they're going to say, well, if you do that, we're going to screen them, we're going to roll back. Well, on paper it works, but it doesn't always work if you do a good job. If you do a good job in here, the best way to defense that is to switch on it. Now, on the perimeter, these three perimeter guys, they're going to switch. And this is a good example of what happens. I went to several of the college coaches. We get together and we talk, and so this guy ran this play. He had a big player in here, and he had a great scorer here, and so he would take and maybe pass the ball here, and this big guy and this guy'd go down and set double picks. This is the point guard. This guy'd come down in here and come off that double. Now that is really tough to cover, but it so happens we're going to switch that. See, we're going to take our guy and come together and switch that. So you don't use perimeter people in those double picks because we're going to switch it on you, and we're going to hurt you with that. On the perimeter and on our defense, we do a lot. If you're switching, there's one thing I want to mention to you on switching. Let's make it a little. How many of you switch? Do you switch at all? If you switch, raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you do. On switching, and if you switch, then you know. If you're not used to switching, we'll get a guy here and we'll do this. Now, if you're going down, let's say you're going down the screen. If you go down the screen, if you're going down the screen, what your man will want to do is to jump out here and help. Now, you can't do that because you got to stay with him. Because as you go down, if you jump out, he's going to roll the basket. Leave this open. So the way we do it, we go down with him. We go down, we come together. We come together, and as we're moving out to pick up the guy here, this man must move over and prevent the roll back. And the key, and you just have to work on it. So what we do, we play 3-on-3. We take our three perimeter people and we work on faking screens, cutting. We work on setting screens and just play 3-on-3. So we get to where we can switch. And you say, well, aren't you worried about mismatches? No. Most of the time you're not going to have a problem with that. Seldom will you ever do it. And so with the switching and the switching inside, I think you can take average talent and do a lot better job. Because you don't have to worry about fighting over screens. Again, it takes a good, strong, quick player to fight over consecutive picks all the time. So if you haven't tried it now, and when you do this, you better have an offense that's fairly sound. If you don't, then you won't score. You'll find out how good your offense is if you start switching on it.